It's already over. The marriage. The boxing fairy tale. The carefully curated rebrand that tried to sell this entire situation like a Hallmark storyline with championship belts attached to it. All of it finished. And the part nobody was ever supposed to hear? The part that was meant to stay behind closed doors, behind PR filters, behind rehearsed interviews, that part didn't leak through an enemy. It leaked in her own voice. 72 hours. That's all it took. 72 hours for everything to collapse. Papoose'S didn't get exposed by a rival. He didn't get dragged by an outsider. He didn't even get taken down by the woman people expected might eventually speak. No, he got caught by the one person who was supposed to protect the narrative. His own girlfriend. Sitting comfortably on a couch she had no business sitting on. Smiling through a conversation she should have navigated carefully. Relaxed enough to forget that every word, every pause, every slip carries weight when the entire relationship is already under a microscope. And then it happened. One sentence. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Not even framed like a revelation. Just said. Casually. Carelessly. Irreversibly. And the moment that sentence hit the air, everything changed. 4 years of curated Instagram captions. 4 years of public appearances. 4 years of carefully shaped interviews designed to soften timelines and blur boundaries. All of it collapsed into a single viral clip. A clip the internet has been replaying over and over again like courtroom evidence. Not entertainment. Evidence. So don't expect a soft introduction to this story. We're not starting at the beginning. We're starting at the explosion, and working backwards through the wreckage until the full structure of what really happened becomes impossible to ignore. But before we go any further, lock into this. Everything you're about to hear is based on publicly available material, interviews, live streams, statements, and the digital footprint these individuals have left behind themselves. No private leaks. No hidden files. Just patterns that millions of people have already noticed. We're just putting those patterns into words. Now picture the setting. A controlled environment. Podcast couch. Soft lighting designed to lower defenses. A tone that feels conversational, not confrontational. Across from the host sits Claressa Shields, two-time Olympic gold medalist, undisputed champion, widely considered one of the most dominant figures in modern boxing. Inside the ring, she's untouchable, disciplined, calculated, precise. But outside the ring, that discipline slipped, because she didn't show up to that interview like a strategist. She showed up like someone trying to sell a version of her life that hadn't been fully stress-tested. She was open, relaxed, volunteering details nobody had actually asked for. And then the conversation shifted. It turned toward children, toward the future, toward family. And that's when everything broke. She said it plainly. Papoose'S is the one pushing for a baby. Not we. Not mutual. Him. Specifically him. A man who is still legally married. A man whose existing marriage has not been fully dissolved. A man who, according to her own words, has been urging her to step away from active title fights. Real scheduled career-defining fights. To get pregnant immediately. Not later. Not eventually. Now. And that's where the tone shifted from storytelling to something much heavier. Because once she said it, she tried to soften it. Tried to reframe it. We do want kids, she clarified. He asked me. But the damage was already done. Because people didn't hear the correction. They heard the truth that slipped out before the correction arrived. This wasn't her dream. This was his urgency. An urgency like that raises questions. Serious ones. Now here's where things get uncomfortable, because that statement didn't exist in isolation. It echoed something that had already been said publicly, months earlier, by Remy Ma. She had already described a similar pattern: pressure, consistency, repetition, and more specifically a preference, not just for a child, but for a son. Now let's be very clear here. These are allegations and interpretations drawn from public statements, not verified facts. But when multiple narratives begin aligning in pattern, people start paying closer attention. Because patterns tell stories that individual moments can hide. And the story forming here didn't look like simple relationship tension. It started to look like something more calculated. If someone is repeatedly pushing for a child under unstable conditions, while refusing to fully resolve existing commitments, then it's fair to question the motivation. Is it about building a family? Or securing a connection that can't easily be broken? Because a child doesn't just represent love. A child represents permanence, legal ties, emotional obligations, long-term attachment that exists regardless of whether the relationship survives. And that's where the conversation shifted from emotional to strategic. Because at the same time this pressure exists, there are conflicting statements. In another interview, Papoose openly stated he doesn't want to live with Claressa Shields. Not temporarily, not situationally, fundamentally. He described not wanting to share a household, not wanting to build a domestic space together. So now the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. He doesn't want to live with her but wants a child with her. That's not a traditional family structure. That's a fragmented blueprint. And when you strip emotion away and look at it logically, it raises a difficult question. If the goal isn't partnership, then what exactly is the goal? Because relationships operate on alignment. And this situation shows misalignment at almost every level. Timing, intention, and long-term vision. But here's where the analysis needs to stay honest. This is not a one-sided dynamic. Because while the spotlight has focused heavily on Papoose'S actions, this situation didn't begin randomly. It developed over time, with participation from both sides. Claressa Shields entered this situation aware of its complexity. Public narratives around financial instability, relationship strain, and personal tension already existed. And stepping into that environment wasn't accidental. It was a decision. Just like his decision to engage with her was also deliberate. Which means this wasn't a spontaneous love story. It was a relationship formed under complicated, visible conditions. And when relationships begin under those conditions, they carry instability forward. That's not judgment, that's pattern recognition. Now add another layer. During that same interview, Claressa admitted something important. She is afraid of pregnancy. Not uncertain. Not hesitant. Afraid. She described watching childbirth and feeling overwhelmed. She described intentionally living without children. And yet, in the same conversation, she acknowledged pressure to have one immediately. That contradiction matters. Because it highlights a gap between personal readiness and external expectation. And when those two things don't align, decisions made under pressure tend to create long-term consequences, not short-term solutions. Now zoom out even further. Because this story isn't just about three individuals navigating a complicated relationship. It's about a broader pattern in modern media culture, where dysfunction is packaged as entertainment, where instability is reframed as transformation, where complicated, often painful situations are edited into digestible, shareable content. And the audience consumes it, analyzes it, debates it, but rarely steps back to question why these patterns keep repeating. Because behind every viral clip, there are real people dealing with real consequences. Families, children, partners. And those consequences don't disappear when the trending cycle moves on. They linger, quietly, privately, long after the internet finds something new to watch. And that brings us to the part of the story that hasn't been as loud but matters just as much. The silence. The individuals who aren't speaking. The ones who aren't sitting on podcasts or addressing narratives publicly. Because silence in situations like this isn't absence. It's restraint. And restraint usually means there's more beneath the surface than what's currently visible. Which means the story people think they understand is probably incomplete. And incomplete stories are dangerous because they invite assumptions to fill in the gaps. So where does that leave everything? Simple. The narrative that was being built, the polished, marketable version of events, has cracked. Not because someone attacked it, but because it couldn't hold under its own weight. And once a narrative cracks publicly, it doesn't go back together the same way. People remember. They connect dots. They revisit old statements with new context. And suddenly, everything starts making more sense than it did before. That's where this is now.